Hello, I'm Rebecca Downs. Welcome to the second episode of the second series of my podcast, Downs Your Way, in association with Blues in Britain magazine. Thanks so much for all your positive comments about my interview with Luke Morley in episode 1. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. Just to say again that if you're tuning in because you're a fan of my guest, then you can find out more about the magazine and about me and what I do in the following links in the show notes. As you know, in this new series, I'm taking a new direction and I'm asking you to come with me on a journey through the landscape of the current music scene, looking at what's going on and the impact it has on musicians and how they deal with it. In this second episode, I talked to Walter Trout, American blues guitarist, singer-songwriter, in an interview where we focus on the perspective of an international touring artist. Hope you enjoy it. You're coming with me. So, hello! We have the most amazing guest with us today. We've got one of my mega idols, Mr. Walter Trout. Walter, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rebecca. It's good to be here.
Oh, it's great. Where are you at the moment?
Well, I am out in the sand dunes up in the northwest corner of Denmark in a little fishing village of 500 people.
Wow.
And we have a house here, and our backyard is the North Sea, and it's where we come to sort of relax, you know. It's vastly different than Los Angeles. So
wow.
We come here and we kind of take it easy for a while.
Wow. Well, I mean, I've been very privileged to travel a lot around America, and I've been to worked with some people in Los Angeles, and it is a very different place to what the place you are now, definitely. Because one of the questions actually that I wanted to really talk about today was because you've always been so busy. Before I started this call, we were reminiscing about when I saw you, you know, back in the day, the Robin one in Dudley. It's like you are gigging and you've been gigging for, you know, it just seems like, and you don't stop, you know, that's kind of it's a very, very busy life. So, yeah, so how do you unwind? How does Walter Trout unwind?
Well, back in the day, before, you know, back in Canned Heat and John Mayall, I'd unwind with, you know, a large bottle of Jack Daniels, but I had to stop that. But I like to come here to our house in Denmark and take walks in nature and walk down at the beach. And my wife and I, we kick back and watch movies. And all of our 3 children live in Denmark now. And so we see our kids. In 2 days, I'm going to go watch our oldest son graduate and get his bachelor's degree in music from the Royal Conservatory of Music in Aalborg.
Wow.
And then our middle kid is going to be playing a gig, some music festival, and our youngest son is going to come visit us this weekend. He lives in Copenhagen and is apprenticing with a Michelin-starred chef. He loves to cook. And they all live here. My family's here. And so I kind of like to be a husband and a dad when I can, because then I get out on the road with, you know, the old fat blues musicians, and here we go, you know.
Do they have to be old and fat? Is that a prerequisite?
Actually, no.
Okay.
I'm probably just speaking of myself at this point. It's when I look in the mirror and go, what happened?
No way. So it's like, was it a whole sort of family migration to Denmark then?
Well, you know, I married a Danish girl, and, you know, my kids all have dual citizenship. And we've just all, you know, they've all ended up coming over here. They can, for example, because my son is a Danish citizen, he can go to the Royal Conservatory of Music. Of course, he had to he had to go through auditions and testing to get in. They don't take a lot of people. But he got in, and it's basically free, and he even gets money to live on from the government, which in America would cost us, $200,000 a year to have your kid in Juilliard or somewhere like that. Wow. And so it's just my kids can go to school here. It's a whole different thing than the States,
Yeah, I mean, it's very different to the UK as well, because I do believe that hasn't Denmark been rated the happiest place to live? It's got the happiest people.
People have been rated the happiest, and it's also one of the top countries in the world to start a business. And the government will actually do things like, let's say you started a small business. Let's say you opened a little shop. You wanted to sell clothes or something. The government will actually support your business for at least 6 months to help you get started, which, of course, would never happen in America because they'll all start screaming the dreaded word socialism, which translates to let's take our tax money and help people instead of just putting it into the military. And I don't get me going on politics.
Well,
let's change the subject.
It's the same in the UK, obviously, and we're very similar on that level. A lot of people that know what I do know that I also teach as well, and obviously to do a degree in the UK is upward of £9,000 every year, and that's just for the tuition fees. So when you're telling me about, your son going to this amazing world-famous institution and doesn't have to pay and still gets a living allowance, which students used to back in the UK way back when, that's just, that to me is just the way that things should be.
Yeah, let's educate our youth, But I really don't want to get into politics because I will piss off half of the people in the United States.
I know. It's hard. It's tough because, it's tough, and I know exactly what you mean. But, I can understand why you're in Denmark and kind of feel like moving there myself now, to be honest with you. So, watch your space.
It's, my mother-in-law lives down the road, so my wife gets to hang with her mom, and it just makes sense. We're here about half the time, and then the other half of the time we're back in California.
Yeah. Is it
I'm still a California guy.
Yeah.
I love California. I truly do.
Yeah. I mean, I love California. I have to say, when I've been there, and I'm lucky to go over and see quite a lot of the United States, and I absolutely love California and I love LA, but I love places where I could definitely not afford to live, like Huntington Beach and Manhattan Beach, which is kind of like the hippie lifestyle that I love, but to live there would cost me more than probably both my arms and legs if I sold them on the...
I was lucky in that... For example, we got our house in Huntington Beach like 32 years ago. There's no way we could afford it now, even though I do fine at music, but I could not go into Huntington Beach now and purchase a house a block away from the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
But 32 years ago, we were able to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people did that back then and, reaping the benefit now, which is fantastic that there's, people like you that are still living in that amazing place. Because if you haven't been, folks, it is amazing. It is such a beautiful place to live. It would be fabulous. So it's kind of like I've talked to a few people so far about the gigging industry, and they're kind of down on it at the moment, our scene in general, because, after COVID and lockdown, they feel that, things have been disrupted quite a lot for them. Ticket sales are down, all that kind of thing. I mean, so talking about, yourself, how have you found it after lockdown, coming back and touring again?
I was very happy to get back to work. I mean, for almost 2 years, we were in our house here in Denmark, and we'd go out and walk every day, and I was in good shape and everything. But I'm basically a driven artist. I want to, I'm in the middle of recording my 31st album, and of course, there are places I go and play now that I used to play where ticket sales are down, and then there are other places where I sell it out. And I know there are places, for example, I've been very lucky. I recently did a tour of Germany, and there were all sorts of sold-out gigs, and I know that there are some well-known people who I shan't name who canceled their German tour because they weren't selling any tickets, but I was able to go there and do really well. And I mean, I'm happy to be back. I love getting up and playing to people and looking them in the eye and, what do you think about this, and but I do think that some of the people that I know, after they had 2 years off during COVID, they come back and it's more difficult for them. They sort of, it's a little tougher for them. They feel like it's harder to do. The thing where you do a 12-hour drive and do a gig at the end. Certain people I know used to be sort of, this is what we do. And now it's, I don't think I can do this anymore, and I'm like, well, I'll do it, I just figured as part of the gig. And I'm one of the lucky ones who actually enjoys being on the road also. There are a lot of musicians who don't like being on the road. My guitar idol, my original guitar idol was Michael Bloomfield. And he despised touring.
Okay.
And I remember when I was first starting and I'd read interviews with him, and I was 16 or 17 years old, and he'd be talking about how much he hated touring. And I would think to myself, man, I would love to do that. I'd love to go from city to city and play music for people. I mean, what am I going to do? Drive a cab or something. I mean, this is all I ever wanted to do. From the time I was a little boy, that's all I wanted to do. And so maybe I have not hit levels of success. I'm not the next Jimi Hendrix or something, but I am actually able to live my childhood dream, and I try to never forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I always think to myself when I hear and especially kind of mega famous artists I won't mention their names, but I mean the top % of streamed artists, winning the Brits, saying, and they're touring in huge luxury and all the rest of it, go, I hate being on tour. I hate it. I hate gigging live. And you're like, why the hell are you doing? What are you doing then? I'd give everything I own to be in your position. What are you doing it for,
I know. And, I've had some well-known artists who I respect greatly, but say to me, for example, I could never tour in a van. I don't know how you do it. And I go, to be honest, I never gave a shit if I was in a beat-up old station wagon. To me, it's an adventure. And it's, to me, when you're in a band and you're out there on the road, it's like you're a sports team. You're a sports team, and it doesn't matter how you get to that field. You get out on that field and give it everything you've got. And I'm like, well, you couldn't tour in a van. Well, then, I guess you're not, in a certain sense, really a blues musician. Because, for example, I remember, here's an example, 1980, maybe 84, something like that. 83. I was on tour with John Mayall in America in a van, and Buddy Guy had yet to have Damn Right I Got the Blues and win all these awards. And we did a gig with Buddy in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we were all hanging out after the gig, and we were all partying and drinking and doing the whole deal. And at about 3 a.m., Buddy says to his band, I feel like going home. And so he packs his band in, and they're in a little van. And they've got all their gear, all their equipment in the back of the van. And there's 5 guys, and they pack into the 2 front seats. And they take off, and they're driving. He's going to drive them from Fort Lauderdale to Chicago. 2,000 miles or something, right?
Wow.
And they're leaving, it's 3 a.m., and there they go, and they're in this little van, and we wave goodbye, and John Mayall looks at me and says, that's the blues. And if you never went through that phase, that's the blues, It doesn't matter how the fuck you get there. It's what you do when you're there, And so I don't know what I'm trying to say here other than, I can tour in a van and I love every minute of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's about I always call some kind of the mother figure of the band, obviously being a female, and I always call them my babies. Come on, my little babies, we're getting in the band. And it's like a little family, and it's the family you've created, and it is something very, very special. It does change, people come, people go.
Yeah.
But it's definitely it's a family, isn't it? And people have knocked me for that. Some musicians have said, you shouldn't, it's not a family. Don't be so female about it. It's like, I'm not being female. This is a family.
No. You're not being female. And let me tell you, my childhood was a horrific, terrible experience. And if you look up dysfunction in the dictionary, you see a photo of my supposed family. And family didn't exist for me. And on February the 9th, 1964, I was 13 years old. No, I'm sorry, I was 12. I was about to turn 13. And the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show. And they all looked alike, and they were all playing and looking at each other with these little smirks between them, little smiles, like they had inside info between them, and they had little secrets. And I looked at that and I thought to myself, there's family. And from that moment on, I got to be in a band, Now, also, I have to be the boss. Mm-hmm. You have to temper it you've got to be the boss. And there's times you've got to make decisions they're not going to like. There's times you've got to just be a boss. But still, I remember watching them and thinking, that's what I'm going to do. There's a family right there.
Yeah. And
so family to me was not determined by blood. That wasn't it. It was determined by that feeling you get with certain people and that closeness that I saw that they had at that point. And they were looking at each other, and I was sitting there mesmerized. And I was like, okay, that's it for me. From now on, I'm going to be in a band, There's a family. So you're completely right. That's what it is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So on that note, do you think that drew you as much as your love for guitar and songwriting and performing? Was it kind of an equal mesh of, okay, I want to feel that sense of belonging and family? Was that as much of a draw as the musical aspect?
Well, yes, it was a little of each. Now, I did get into, I spent a good amount of years as a sideman, and I spent a good amount of years in bar bands, cover bands. And, for example, I was in one of the finest bands that has ever existed on the planet. We were called Midnight Angel, and we had 5 lead singers, and we had great musicians, and the keyboard player was a guy named Danny Timms, who went on to play with Bonnie Raitt and Paul Simon and Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash. And we were literally 5 lead singers. We were like the Eagles, and we all wrote songs, but we played in bars and did cover songs, and I thought, we can do it. But it was an attempt at democracy. And we'd be on stage, and because everybody sang lead, one guy'd sing, and then we'd be on stage arguing for 10 minutes over who gets to sing the next song. No, it's my turn. No, but I want to sing one. No, well, you sang one before. And it was ridiculous. And that's when I said to myself, I love it. I want to be in a band, but you know what? This democracy does not work. There's got to be the fearless leader. And when I get through with my sideman years, after I played with John Lee Hooker and Big Mama Thornton and Percy Mayfield and Bo Diddley and Lowell Folsom and Eddie Cleanhead Vincent and Pee Wee Creighton and Canned Heat and John Mayall, after I did that for 18 years, I'm like, I shall start my own band, and I will be the fearless leader, and what I say goes, and they can be part of it or they don't have to be. But it actually worked for me. That's when that band I was in, it was so great, but we couldn't even agree. Hey, let's rehearse tomorrow. No, I don't feel like fucking rehearsing tomorrow. Okay, now we're going to rehearse over in Brant's garage. Now, I don't like rehearsing in Brant's garage. And I'm like, come on, and it didn't work. And we were our own worst enemies, because that band could have gone on and been like the Eagles, And, I had most of the songs on my first 2 albums that we did in that band. Danny was an incredible, and still is an incredible songwriter, and one of the greatest piano player singers on the face of the earth. And, but we just couldn't. It was trying to have 5 band leaders in a band, right? And it just doesn't work. And that's when I had my years as a sideman, which I am eternally grateful for, because I learned how to back people up and how to be a member of a unit and not be the guy out in front, but be part of the sum of the parts, right? And I am eternally grateful for those years of being a sideman. And learning how to play rhythm guitar. That's an art unto itself.
Yeah. I don't play lead myself, thankfully, because people would probably start to cry, and not for the right reasons. I play rhythm as well and sing. So, yeah, it is a true art form, and people kind of sometimes dismiss it a little bit. So,
Yeah, and I was very also lucky in that I got to. Have you ever heard of Jesse Ed Davis?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I played in his band for 2 years.
Cool.
When I moved to California, and he was my mentor and my dear friend, and he taught me more about playing the guitar than anybody in my life.
Wow.
Unfortunately, we got really, really involved in lots of drugs. And but I spent 2 years with Jesse, and near the end of Jesse's life, when he had kind of burned a lot of bridges, he was having a hard time getting a gig, and I had him in my band. He played in my band. I gave him a gig. And but I'm glad you've heard of him. A lot of times I do interviews, and I go, man, I got to play with Jesse Ed for 2 years. And they go, who? And I have to try to school them. This guy played with George Harrison and Bob Dylan and Eric Clapton. And, don't you know who he was?
Yeah, it's that forgotten art, isn't it? That forgotten, there's some almost forgotten people that should never be forgotten. And I think you're right, he's one of them.
Yeah, and as far as rhythm guitar, that guy taught me, because I was basically the rhythm guitarist in his band. I wasn't playing solos. And he taught me. We did all the stuff he did with Taj Mahal. those first couple albums, and I learned so much from that guy. But so that's why I'm grateful for my sideman years. It prepared me to go solo,
Yeah.
And I think there's some guys that come out, they're 15 and 16, and they come out as themselves, and I think they miss something. They miss a little bit of that education of being in a band and being in a unit.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, because a lot of this is, I'm very, I'm talking to a lot of people on, mental health and mindset and well-being and all that kind of thing. And I think, especially sort of teaching younger people myself, there seems to be an obsession with the connection with fame and music together, rather than I tell them, look, when I joined a band at 12 years old, we weren't thinking about fame. We're thinking about what songs we're going to write. We're thinking about, can we get a gig at 12 years old? Is there any place that'll give us a gig?
Yes.
Where can we rehearse next? We weren't thinking, I want to be famous. It wasn't even in our mind. And I think sometimes that is the problem with musicians and music when they come apart, is because the fame it's overtook the love and the music.
Yes, and that is part of that as a result of all this pop idol, American Idol, this country's got talent, all that kind of bullshit. There's no longer the thought of practice your instrument, get good on it, get together with a group of guys and go play at the corner pub.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. And you play at that pub and you have the time of your life. You play there 5 nights a week and you play from 9 till 1:30 and you do 5 sets of music and you love every minute of it. And some nights you feel like shit. Maybe you have a cold or you haven't slept, but you get up there and you give it everything you've got.
Yeah.
And maybe there's 5 people in the place. It doesn't matter, When Tina Turner went solo, she was, nobody was coming to see her when she first started her solo career. I was in Canned Heat at the time, and I remember the other guitarist in Canned Heat, Mike Halby, saying, man, I went to a little club in L.A. last night and saw Tina Turner. I went, really? She's not with Ike? He said, yeah, she's solo, and there was 20 people in the place. He said, but she got up and played like there was 10,000 people, and that's what you have to do.
And I think, yeah, so I think you're absolutely right with the talent shows. I always try to steer all my vocal students away from them because they're selling the idea of fame. They're not selling the idea of music and talent. They're really not. They're just an entertainment show, and they're misleading people as far as, I think it's like, Romans would throw people to the lions. It's the same sort of thing, really. It's horrible. The whole concept is horrible. So, but I just think that, that social media aspect of kind of everyone can kind of be famous as kind of just sometimes it just eclipses. And I mean, you're on social media a little bit. I know you probably got people helping you with that as well, but does that affect you? Does social media affect you, your mental health, your well-being?
It's funny, I just had a talk with a guy who is anyway, instead of telling you about him, we had a talk about social media. I need to do it. I need to say, for example, when I finish my album, this album 31, I'll have to go back to California, and I'm going there at the end of July, and I'll finish it. And as a matter of fact, I got a couple special guests that are going to blow your mind, but I can't tell you about them yet. But so I have to be on social media, say, hey, everybody, here's my new album, that kind of stuff. But I actually, and I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man, but I think life was easier and better before fucking computers and cell phones. And I know what computers can do, and I know they do all sorts of wonderful things. But I think social media has a negative effect on our world, and but I have to be on there. It's simply to market the music. You know, that's the business aspect of it is, you know, I have to be able to say, hey, I'm coming to your town. Come to the gig, you know. So people like us, you and I, we have to be on there. But I remember when my dad died and left us some money, my brother said to me, hey, man, you need to, you know, this is back before I got sober. He said, hey, Walt, instead of all the money going up your nose, you need to invest some of it. So I said, what should I invest in? And he said to me, there's a new thing. It's called cell phones. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, somebody can call you as you're walking down the street, or they can call you in your car. And I said to him, hey, Eddie, I don't want anybody to call me in my car. I don't want anybody to call me when I'm walking down the street. They can call my house, leave me a message, and when I feel like calling them back, I will. And if I don't feel like calling them back, I won't. I want to get away from the fucking phone. And so I didn't invest in cell phones. I don't know if he did or not. But and I still think they're a bit of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, I think they are. And I think it's kind of like, so how do you manage, you know, if you do negative comments on social media, do they affect you at all?
Oh, I get them all the time.
You do? All the time? You get them all the time?
I've done some postings. I had you can look back over my postings. I had a guy just going off on me. You don't know how to play. You don't know how to play the blues. You're a fucking moron. Fuck you. And I didn't answer him. I refused to engage with these people. And then he came after me and said he wanted to fight me. And
what?
And he's a wannabe guitar player.
Of course he is.
And I just wanted to answer him and say, hey, how's your career going? You don't think I can play? That's okay. I put on my T-shirts, I put too many notes too loud, so they know what they get. That's how I approach it. I play too many notes and I'm too fucking loud. Now you know what you're gonna get. You don't have to come to my gig. You don't have to buy the record. But I wanted to say, how's your career going? Where are you gigging so we can check out your brilliance? But I refuse to engage with these people. But I get it all the time.
I am surprised. I am so surprised at that.
I think my keyboard player wanted me to write this song. I told him the internet is the province of cowards because they can go on there and say whatever they want. They don't even have to use their name, and they can spew their shit. And but my dear wife says, Walter, you've got 2,000 comments that say, hey, we love what you do, thank you. And then you get this one jerk. But that's what you remember.
It is.
And you might put out a record or have somebody come to your gig and they write a glowing, beautiful review. But then you get a shit review and that's the one you remember. You know, and you have to learn to deal with it. You have to say, whatever. You know, I read an interview with Bob Dylan and he said that years ago, he stopped reading any press about himself, you know.
Well, it's self-preservation, isn't it? And I think, you know, and I get a lot of negative comments and, you know, just about everything, to be honest, from me cutting my hair and people not liking that to thinking that I'm not blues, which I am blues tinged, but I'm not 100% blues. I'll admit that, you know.
Me either.
You know, and it's
yeah.
So it's like, you know, and you just think, yeah, well, personally, I think that, you know, you should be, you know, it should be policed better, and it should be, you know, you should be able to identify people, and that would stop a lot of this. Because prior to social media, did you get that kind of feedback? Would somebody come up to you face to face and tell you that? As much?
I would get people that would come up face to face and say some stupid shit, but the majority of them have always been very positive. That's how I've been able to have career. I've been at this now for, I've had a solo, my own band for 34 years, and I'm still able to go out and tour. I'm still able to make records. You know, I'm, as you say, I'm a very busy, I'm a driven artist, you know. I had my liver transplant 9 years ago. It took me over a year to relearn how to play the guitar again. I had to start all over again because I had brain damage and it was wiped clean from my memory. So I taught myself from scratch. And the album I'm working on is my 7th album since the transplant. You know, I basically have done an album a year for 34 years, except for when I was, you know, dead.
That is unbelievable. And what's really, you know, the kids that I teach are kind of 18 years old plus. And I was speaking to a few of the guitarists the other day, and kind of like I'm into the blues, you know, says one. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking maybe they're just saying it to please me because they know that's kind of what I'm... And he's like, have you heard of Walter Trout? I said, have I? And so this, you know, he's just turned 18, you know, a kid in the middle of Birmingham, UK, is a huge fan of yours. And, you know, when they're all playing, you know, death metal and, you know, all that kind of thing, which is fine, you know, which is fine. There's a lot of young guitarists out there that I know of that you are their idol for, and that I know personally and teach. So it's like, when I told them I was going to speak to you, they were like, you're speaking to Walter Trout? I'm like, yes. So there you go.
Well, I'll tell you what, the next time I play near you, bring a couple of them to the gig, and I'd be happy to meet them after the gig.
They would. Oh, thank you.
Let me tell you something. I appreciate and love young people who are trying to do this. When I was 10 years old, you know, my mom used to take me. She knew I loved music. She knew that's what I was going to do. So she took me to see James Brown and Ray Charles and the Righteous Brothers and all these people. But one time she said, hey, Walter, at the theater down the road, Duke Ellington and Tony Bennett are there tonight. Do you think we should go? And I said, of course we should go. She goes, well, let's go down there now and buy tickets. So we went there at about 3 p.m, and we're at the box office. And all these cars drive up, and these very well-dressed black men get out of the cars carrying horn cases, and they go in. My mom goes, that's Duke Ellington and the orchestra. She goes, follow me. She knocks on the stage door, and she says, my son is an aspiring trumpet player, because I was going to be a jazz trumpet player, and I was actually very good at it, and I started that at age 5. And at that moment, Paul Gonzalez, who was one of the sax players, walked out the back and stood on the back stoop there, the patio, and I said to him, you're Paul Gonzalez? And he said, yeah. And I said, I love the solo you do on diminuendo and crescendo and blue. And he looked at me and went, what? And he goes, come with me. And he drags my mom and I in, and he says, hey, guys, this little white kid knows all our music. And I went, Johnny Hodges, I love how you do Mood Indigo. Sam Woodyard, you're my favorite drummer. And all this. And I ended up spending the afternoon with Duke Ellington.
Oh.
And he was the nicest. And I got a trumpet lesson from Cat Anderson, and he let me play his trumpet.
Oh.
And anyway, he was the kindest, most humorous, most charismatic, warm, amazing, glowing with an aura about him, human being. And I sat on this couch with Duke Ellington and talked. And I said to my mom, if being a musician makes you like those guys, I want to do that. 4 years later, I was in a music store in Philadelphia, and in walked Buddy Rich with somebody else. And I went and said very, very respectfully, Mr. Rich, my father's your biggest fan, and he plays your music all the time. And and I love it. And could I have an autograph for my dad? And he turned around and said, you little fucking asshole. And he pulled his hand back like he was going to hit me in the face. And his friend stopped him. And I was traumatized. So now, when I meet a young person and I know how impressionable they are, to this day, if I see a photo of Buddy Rich, I start shaking. So I know how impressionable young people are. And when I meet a young person who says, Mr. Trout, I love your music, I immediately think to myself, are you going to be Duke Ellington or are you going to be Buddy Rich? You can go either way here. I don't want to die and some guy who I met when he was 15, 20 years down the line goes, I met Walter Trout and what an asshole. I don't want that. No. So I try to be as kind and open to young people as I can be, because I know they're very impressionable and you can steer them, Yeah, man, best of luck with your music. Keep playing. Play from your heart, And that's all stuff Duke Ellington told me. He talked to me about being on the road. He talked to me about being an artist and not worrying about fame, how the music business is fickle. One year he goes, they're going to love you. The next year they're going to hate you. You're going to make a record. They're going to love it. Your next record, they're going to think you're not so good. He goes, what you keep your mind on being the best artist you can be, and you focus on your creativity and your art, and the rest of it is really, in a certain sense, bullshit. Be an honest artist. I'll never forget sitting there with him. I'm going to tear up thinking about it, But so I know young people, you can influence them greatly by how you treat them, If they like these kids you're talking about, if they think that about me, I want to greet them and wish them good luck and shake their hand,
Well, they're going to be listening to this, I'm sure, when it goes out, and they'll just be so touched by that. I just know that will mean the world to them. And, they're great kids, and there's a lot of talent out there, and it's, and it's, as you say, it's about nurturing and letting go of a lot of things that are not important, and concentrating on your own creativity and your own love of what you do, and then you can't go wrong, Yeah,
it's the truth.
But go on.
You need to be able. I have to be able to do a gig or make a record and look in the mirror and say to myself, "That's the best I had." I was as honest as I can be there. It's just me. But I'm not interested in some persona of an artist. For example, I think David Bowie was a great artist, but I want to know about David Bowie. I don't give a shit about Ziggy Stardust. Mm-hmm. Who's the real person here? But that's just me. That's not for everybody. That's my own personal thing. I want to know, what's this person? What do they feel? What do they believe? What are they made of?
Yeah, it's getting to the root of the person, isn't it?
Of the person, yeah. I don't care about dancers behind them, and I don't care about somebody that puts on a persona. And, I want to know who that artist is, If you go to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, there is a quote on the wall, and his brother had written him a letter and said, because Van Gogh was going to be a minister, right? He was in theological school. He dropped out to go paint. His brother wrote him a letter. Why are you doing this? And he wrote back, to express an honest human emotion. And they have that quote on the wall. And I thought, that's exactly what I'm interested in any art form. But again, that's just me. I don't think everybody has to be like me or has to agree with this statement. I'm just speaking my own personal thought. I want somebody to express an honest human emotion. And I can get emotion out of a Joni Mitchell song. I can get emotion out of Wop Bop a Loo Bop a Wop Bam Boom. Yeah. But it's honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, like speaking personally for myself, when I know that I've been influenced at the time, rightly or wrongly, by what somebody said, or that song that I've created isn't, I can tell that there's a lack of honesty there. You know what I mean? I can tell that what I've truly created isn't really what I needed to create, you know?
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap this up in a minute, but let's leave it.
I would like you to meet my wife.
Hey, I would love to meet your wife.
Saved my life, changed my life, keeps me in line, has managed my career for 32 years.
God bless you.
So any success, because I'm still playing the same shit, any success I've had is due to her right here.
Well, God bless you. God bless you for Kaya. It's so good to meet you. Thank you so much for, allowing me to do this and for looking after this wonderful man.
Oh, I know. My pleasure.
Most times.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
You must be hungry. Do you want me to make you some food?
Sure.
I'll get it going. So you guys are wrapping up, right?
We're wrapping up, yeah. I just wanted to ask one final question, if that's all right. Just to kind of going back to what we just spoke about. If you've got any advice today for any of the young kids out there, or for anyone that's starting off in this industry, what would you say to them?
Like the kids you teach that you were telling me about.
What would you say?
I would go back to that same thing that I heard from Duke Ellington. And concentrate on being an artist, and concentrate on trying to express something you feel or something you believe, and work on being a musician, work on your instrument, work on your singing. Take it seriously, and don't get influenced by all the pop idol shows and all that. If you become famous, that's cool, but that's not what this is about. It's about being an artist.
100%.
It's about nurturing whatever talent you have and developing it to the fullest. When I got sober, Carlos Santana spent 3 days with me and did sort of an intervention. And he came to me after a Mayall gig and said, "What are you doing? You're so drunk up there." And I'll never forget, he said to me, "You've got a gift of music. You've been given a gift, and you're so drunk." He went like this, "You're doing this to where you got the gift." And he gave me a book to read. And the book said, find out what your passion is, what you love, what you have a talent for. Everybody has a talent. They're good at something. Find out what it is, nurture it, develop it, work on it, develop it to its fullest potential that you're able to achieve. And then you share that with the world, however you can do that. And by doing that, you make the world a tiny little bit better. You're contributing to the world.
Wow.
So that's what I would say to these young people.
That's amazing.
And when Carlos did that, I went to I was on tour with Mayall, and I went to him and said, "You will never see me drunk on a stage again." And I haven't been since,
No, thanks.
And that
thank
was
God.
1987.
That is incredible. Thank you so much for that. You said you're working on your new album at the moment. Any sort of semi-release date around? Or
the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
I was supposed to have it done before I had to go out on tour, and I didn't have it done. And now I can't get back to LA till because I'm doing fly-in gigs on the weekends over here. Mm-hmm. Like next week, I'm playing a festival in Denmark, and the weekend after that, I do one day in Poland and the next day in Sweden. At the end of July, I get back to Los Angeles and I finish the record.
Wow.
But it's pretty rocking, I have to say. For example, one of the guests I can tell you about is, do you know who Dee Snider is?
Yes. Amazing.
Dee Snider is a dear friend of mine, and he's asked me if he could sing on my record with me. So I have written him a rockin' fucking metal tune. And we are going for it, and it is hard rock, man.
I love it.
And so there's a lot of really rockin' stuff on this, and I'm sure the blues purists are going to hate it, and I say, well, tough shit.
Exactly.
But they tell me, you can't play the blues. I go, it's funny. You need to tell John Lee Hooker, Big Mama Thornton, John May, all that, because they all hired me because they liked the way I play. But obviously, you know more about the blues than John Lee Hooker ever would.
Oh.
You know?
Well, I cannot wait to hear that. Wow, that is amazing. So I cannot wait to hear it. Walter, thank you so much. And it's been just an absolute privilege and honour talking to you, and so insightful as well. Just thank you for talking to me today, taking the time out.
Well, this has been great. And anytime you want to do this again, I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, I could talk to you forever, but I know your lovely wife is making you some food. As I say, God bless her. So we'll speak to you soon. We'll speak to you soon, Walter. You keep on rocking, and we cannot wait to hear that new album.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And you keep rocking, too, okay? I know you will.
I'll try.
And like I say, I really enjoyed this, so anytime you want to do Volume 2, just let me know, and we'll continue with me rapping my bullshit.
Well, you know, I could listen to that bullshit all day, so don't worry about it.
Take care.
Take care, my darling. Take care.
We'll see you later.
See you later. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for listening to the second episode of the second series of Downs Your Way in association with Blues in Britain magazine. A massive big thank you to the amazing Walter for a brilliant, insightful discussion. I really enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. If you have any comments, questions or feedback, please email me or message me. Contact details, as always, in the show notes. In the next episode, I shall be talking to the wonderful Danny Bryant, who is still managing to tour extensively in Europe despite the challenges faced by UK artists, for reasons he explains when we speak. Be interesting. In the meantime, thank you for listening, take care of yourselves, and goodbye.